In today's Business Matters, with more tariffs likely to be announced next month, President Trump is pushing the Fed for a rate cut. Just hours after voting to keep its key interest rate steady, Trump took to Truth Social to encourage Chair Jerome Powell and his colleagues to ease policy. This comes as the administration prepares to release the results of a study on global trade that will likely lead to further tariffs. Powell said the uncertain impacts from tariffs justifies the Fed's cautious stance right now. The market expects the Fed to wait until June to make any cuts. The Fed is projecting a full percentage point of cuts over the next 3 years. And Delaware is trying to protect its business-friendly reputation. State lawmakers are expected to vote on a corporate law overhaul as soon as next week. SB 21 makes it harder for investors to sue over certain deals involving controlling shareholders. Several companies, mostly with controlling shareholders, have said they might or will leave Delaware. The state generates 20% of its budget revenue from related company fees. Critics have called the bill a giveaway to billionaires. An attorney representing shareholders claims the bill was a result of lobbying by Meta Platforms and would protect its CEO from potential liability. Elon Musk's car company needs to make some repairs. Just over 46,000 Tesla Cybertruck vehicles are being recalled. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the stainless steel exterior trim panel can detach and fall off the truck, causing a potential road hazard. This recall is for Cybertrucks built between November 2023 and last month. Owners of affected vehicles can have the rail assembly repaired at no cost. A guilty plea in an emission fraud scheme by Hino Motors. The U.S. Justice Department says the Toyota subsidiary must now pay $1.6 billion in penalties. The Japanese truck and engine manufacturer has also been hit with 5 years of probation. During that time, Hino will not be allowed to import its diesel engines to the U.S. In January, Hino said it would plead guilty over excess engine emissions in more than 105,000 vehicles in the U.S. A company-commissioned panel said Hino had falsified emissions data on some engines going back to at least 2003. The president of Taiwan says TSMC's $100 billion investment in the U.S. shows the best way to break reliance on Chinese supply chains. He made the remarks in front of Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs. TSMC is building 3 chip foundries, 2 packaging plants, and a research and development center. The company is also in the midst of a previous $65 billion investment for another 3 chip foundries. So far, 1 is operational. Taiwan's president says the investment is due to customer demand and not pressure from the Trump administration. Governor Hobbs says the project is expected to create tens of thousands of jobs. And a new Bankrate poll shows that 1/3 of Americans have more credit card debt than emergency savings. The latest from the Federal Reserve's Consumer Credit Report shows total outstanding consumer debt stood at $5 trillion as of January. And earlier, I talked to Ted Rossman, senior industry expert at Bankrate, on how to get a handle on credit card debt. What's the average credit card interest rate right now, and how did it get there?
20.09% is the current average. That's down a little bit from a record set last summer, 20.79, but still a very high rate. Honestly, the fact that it's fallen about 3/4 of a point, most people are not even going to notice because these rates are really high. Before the Fed started hiking rates in 2022, the average was about 16%. Of course, the Fed raised rates to fight inflation. That made it harder for borrowers. Credit card rates have basically gone from bad to worse, I would say.
So how are credit card rates set?
They're generally set by the prime rate, which is 3 points higher than the federal funds rate that banks charge each other, and that's what the Fed sets. So the prime rate plus a profit margin. And that's a key piece because the margin on credit cards is a lot higher than other financial products. The margin is about 12.5%. And then you add in the prime rate, which is 7.5%, and then you get to around 20. Credit cards have higher margins because it's unsecured debt. It's not backed by an underlying asset like a home or a car. If somebody defaults, it's harder for the bank to get that money back. They can sue you, they can damage your credit. There's a few things they can do, but it's not like a foreclosure on a house where they can just seize the assets. So that's why banks say they charge higher rates. But many say these are too high. In fact, there's a bipartisan effort in Congress to potentially cap credit card rates as low as 10%. I know that sounds great to consumers. I would warn, though, that there could be unintended consequences if that were to pass. Namely, banks would pull back on lending and they would cut rewards.
So give us some practical tips here. What are some methods to reduce credit card reliance?
My favorite tip is to get a 0% balance transfer credit card. This is going to involve moving your existing high-cost debt over to a newly opened card with a 0% promo. One of these lasts as long as 24 months. That's the US Bank Shield card. That was actually just introduced this month. It's the best balance transfer offer we've seen in years. Previously, some of their rivals topped out at 21 months, which is still really good, but 24 months, no interest. If you can attack that debt, that is a really powerful tailwind, avoiding these high interest rates for 2 years.
So for someone juggling multiple debts, what's the most effective repayment strategy in your opinion?
Sometimes people talk about the avalanche or the snowball. I know it's the first day of spring, but we can still talk about our winter metaphors. The avalanche is going to sort from highest rate to lowest. That's going to save you the most money mathematically. The snowball, like momentum building behind a snowball rolling downhill, that's going to involve paying off the smallest amounts first. And then you get more motivated, hopefully, to knock out the bigger amounts. I would come back, though, to that balance transfer option as really the best option if you have good credit and you can roll it all into a 0% promotional rate. One other thought is nonprofit credit counseling. If you don't have great credit, or if you have more than $5,000 or $6,000 in credit card debt, this may actually be your best option. Reputable groups like Money Management International can help you out. Probably negotiate something like a 6 or 7% rate over 4 or 5 years. That's a really good option.
All right, Ted, thank you very much for talking to us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
The CEO of Amtrak is stepping down. In a statement, Stephen Gardner says he's resigning to ensure the company, quote, continues to enjoy the full faith and confidence of this administration. Gardner was appointed to the CEO position in 2022 and had worked at Amtrak for 16 years. His resignation comes after Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk said earlier this month that he believes Amtrak should be privatized. Since Amtrak is a federally chartered corporation, the federal government is the company's majority stockholder. Amtrak has pushed back on the notion that it should be privatized by arguing that profitability is not its main mission. A new CEO has not yet been announced. And be careful before doing your next load of laundry. Woolite is recalling more than 16,000 bottles of its Delicates detergent. Officials say the soap in question might contain a form of bacteria that's often present in water and soil. This bacteria can infect a person by entering through the eyes or a cut in the skin. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, no related injuries were reported. The detergent was sold on Amazon.com in January. More information is available at cpsc.gov. The Federal Reserve decided yesterday to hold interest rates steady, but there are still ways to maximize the interest you earn on your savings. NTD Sharp Marshall explores steps you can take now to protect your bottom line in the current rate environment.
Even though interest rates have been coming down slowly in recent months, you can still get inflation-beating returns on your cash savings. A couple very easy low-risk ways are online high-yield savings accounts, certificates of deposits, and U.S. Treasuries. You will earn virtually nothing on your cash for upcoming expenses and emergencies if you park that money in traditional brick-and-mortar bank savings accounts. The average interest rate on those is just 0.6% according to Bankrate, but you can earn north of 4% by depositing that money in an online high-yield savings account at FDIC-insured banks. The average rate this week is 4.14% through Bankrate.com, but you can find some rates as high as 4.40% or 4.50%. And with certificates of deposit, if you feel comfortable keeping your money locked in for a relatively short period, Basically, anywhere from 3 months to a few years, you might benefit from a bank CD or a CD ladder. Among the variety on offer at Schwab.com this week, the average rates were between 4 and 4.437%. The catch is, if you withdraw the money from a bank before the CD matures, you usually have to pay a penalty. And if you bought the CD through a broker like Schwab, you may need to sell the CD and possibly incur a loss. With U.S. Treasuries, there's a very low-risk way to earn competitive returns in the short run. That is to invest in short-term Treasury bills with varying maturities between 4 weeks and 1 year, and in intermediate-term Treasury notes with maturities between 2 and 10 years. These are investments backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. As of Wednesday afternoon, yields on Treasuries with maturities ranging from 3 months to 5 years were between 3.96% and 4.28%, according to Schwab.com. Interest earned on Treasuries is exempt from state and local taxes, so that may be a good option if you live in a high-tax area. Taxation gets a bit more complicated if you sell a Treasury before it matures, which can trigger a capital gain or loss on top of any interest income you make. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Next, the European Union is delaying its proposed tariffs on imports from the United States. The first phase of revenge tariffs was set to begin on April 1st after the U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports earlier this month. But Thursday, the Commission said instead of 2 phases, all tariffs will begin April 13th. More than $28 billion worth of American goods, including motorboats, motorcycles, whiskey, beer, and produce will be impacted. And the cost for families to travel to Disney World is in the thousands. That's according to a recent study by NerdWallet. Families can expect to spend at least $6,000 for a week-long stay, but here are some tips that can keep costs down.
It's known as the most magical place on Earth, Disney World. Millions of people visit a year, and while it's one of the most visited places in the world, it can also be one of the most expensive.
It is expensive and getting more expensive.
Sally French is a travel expert in NerdWallet. They recently looked at the cost of a trip to Disney and found on the low end, a 7-night trip for a family of 4 costs roughly $6,000. The high end, more than $15,000. But there are ways you can save.
There are plenty of off-property hotels that are still nearby that are much cheaper to stay at.
Another way to cut costs, visit one theme park per day. According to Disney's website, pricing varies by day, but a one-day theme park ticket can cost between $169 to $189 depending on the park. A park hopper will cost you upwards of $200 per person per day.
You might need to cram in multiple parks in one day, in which case a park hopper makes sense.
Disney does offer dining plans for guests to help keep down the cost, but packing your own food can help save a lot of money. Here's where your bill can really add up. Disney offers lightning lane passes to help you bypass those long lines. Multi-pass prices can cost up to $39 per person per park. Then there are the VIP tours, which can cost $450 to $900 an hour.
Those people who are keeping up with the Joneses, who want to have everything, all the bells and whistles, yeah, they might need to budget $15,000 for.
Another way to save, don't visit when kids have off of school.
Here's a bonus tip for you. If you're thinking it might be cheaper to fly to Anaheim and visit Disneyland, think again. NerdWallet found both the California and Florida theme parks to be neck and neck in price. Moving on, the Boston Celtics are entering a new era and won't come cheap. An investor group led by William Chisholm is buying the NBA team for $6.1 billion. The deal still has to be approved by the NBA's Board of Governors, but if it does pass, it will be the highest amount ever spent on a sports franchise in North America. The sale would give Boston its first new owner in more than 20 years. Chisholm, who grew up on Boston's North Shore, is a lifelong Celtics fan. Experts say acts of kindness might make you happier than a higher salary. The World Happiness Report is released each year on the International Day of Happiness. It's a global analysis on happiness and well-being. This year's report paid special attention to acts of benevolence and people's expectations of their communities. We're talking about acts like donating money, volunteering, and doing a nice thing for a stranger. Data suggests 70% of the world's population did at least one kind thing in the last month. An expert with Gallup says acts of generosity predict happiness even more than earning a higher salary. A beloved cartoon dog who made its name on the comic strip has become an icon of the catwalk. The Peanuts comic strip is marking a milestone anniversary with a fashion exhibit for the one and only Snoopy.
From Chanel and Hermes to Balenciaga, famed cartoon dog Snoopy has inspired clothing collections for more than 7 decades.
The plush dog is so cute that once one fashion designer made a costume for Snoopy, then other fashion designers wanted to join in.
To mark the 75th anniversary of the Peanuts comic strip, the Snoopy in Style exhibit opens on March 22nd. It's located in the fashion capital of the world, Paris, inside the Hotel du Grand Veneur. Jeannie Schulz, the wife of Snoopy creator and illustrator Charles Schulz, got a first look.
Well, I think if people come to see this exhibition, this exhibit, and see how beautiful and funny and joyful Snoopy can be, I think that might bring joy to their lives.
Peanuts follows the life of main character Charlie Brown, his friends, and his pet Snoopy. The beloved beagle with a big imagination was inspired by Charles Schulz's own dog.
He had a dog named Spike, but Spike was a very active, enchanting dog and a favorite of the family, and that character went into Snoopy.
Spike was just the starting point. Snoopy made a whole world of possibilities for himself.
But Snoopy really developed himself once he stood up and got on top of the doghouse. And then in his imagination, Snoopy became everything. He became the flying ace. He became the World War II pilot. He became a soldier behind the lines. He became everything that we think of him.
And like his imagination, Snoopy has inspired designers to unleash their creativity. The exhibit has more than 50 plushies showcasing custom designs. It is open until April 5th.
Down on Wall Street, U.S. stocks closed slightly lower today, and this is after veering between gains and losses as investors gauge the latest round of economic data and the Federal Reserve's policy statement against tariff concerns. So selling pressure has intensified in recent weeks after a string of economic indicators potentially signaling that the economy and consumer sentiment may be cooling. And this comes as Trump, of course, his administration imposing reciprocal trade tariffs. And that is it on today's Business Matters.